Let's give a review to the first Marvel movie that the critics on Rotten Tomatoes actually hated. Eternals, directed by Chloe Zhao, the director of Nomadland, a movie I haven't seen yet, but now I'm curious to actually watch that movie. This movie's got a pretty big cast, so I'm going to try to mention as many of the actors as I can here. Gemma Chan plays Cersei, our main character. Richard Madden plays Icarus. He was from the movie Rocket Man, and he plays Cersei's love interest for part of the movie. And then you have Angelina Jolie playing Athena, Salma Hayek as Ajak, who is the leader of the Eternals, Kaman Yoon-janani as Kingo from the movie The Big Sick. He was one of the actors that was really hyped about being in this movie, to the point that they showed pictures of what he did in order to look good for this movie, how much he worked out. Kit Harington from Game of Thrones plays Dane Whitman, who is Cersei's second love interest in the movie. Barry Coogan as Drulig. He was from Killing of a Sacred Deer. He's actually a very good actor. I know some people were saying he's a bad actor. Obviously you've never seen Killing of a Sacred Deer, or else you wouldn't be saying that. There's one that plays an immortal child named Sprite, and the one that plays Angelina Jolie's protector, Gilgamesh, is pretty good in the movie. So let's talk about this film and why I think critics didn't like this movie, and my opinion on this film. Because I did notice when I went on to Rotten Tomatoes that not only did the critics didn't like this movie, but the audience side, which says that's the side that's right, that's always right, gave it positive reviews. Remember, the fans are always right, the audience side is always right. But nobody on YouTube seemed to even take notice to that. They just were totally focused on the critics score, because this was the first time the critics hated an MCU movie. The plot of this movie is that the Eternals are like demigods. They are sent to Earth by the creators of the Marvel world, the Celestials. One Celestial in particular, I forget his name, but he's this big red one, and is sent to Earth practically at the start of mankind, right up until now, to protect us from the deviants, which are these alien creatures that are basically these almost like CGI crystal dogs. And throughout the film, we find out that there is an ulterior motive as to why the Eternals are on Earth, which divides them. Some of them want to stick with this ulterior motive as to why they are on Earth. Others are against this ulterior motive and prefer to protect the humans, even if the Celestial that sent them there says no. And that's pretty much our movie. Now, I could go a little deeper without me spoiling the movie, but let's talk about this film. Now, I knew nothing about the Eternals. I have never read the comics. I know nothing about these characters, and I know there were some complaints online about the fact that some of these characters were either race swapped or gender swapped. But for me, I didn't mind it because I knew nothing about these characters. I wanted these actors to portray the characters the way they could portray them to the best of their ability, and just judge the movie as it is, really. Like a critic should, judge the quality of the overall movie in an objective manner, right? This is the first Marvel movie I was actually bored with, though. And that's saying a lot, because I have never been bored with any of the Marvel movies. And this is the first time I actually felt bored. Usually the reason why I'm never bored with the Marvel movies because I'm always invested with the characters and I'm invested with the story. If I lose investment with the characters and the story, then I start to get bored. And I was losing investment mostly because there were way too many flashbacks. There's like 3 or 4 different flashbacks. That's way too many. I think this movie could have worked so much better if it was told in a linear fashion. And I also think this could have worked better if it was a Disney Plus Marvel series instead of a movie. This movie's trying to do way too much with 10 characters practically. And you're trying to give each character as much character development as possible. And it just feels like too much. We have 2 villains in this movie. One is the main villain and the other one is the side villain. The side villain is a very weak villain and very forgettable villain. The other villain is pretty memorable, but is also, in his own way, pretty generic as well. And I think this movie really could have been done better. Maybe if it had a different director that could actually liven this movie up a bit, because the tone and the pacing of this movie was so slow, and I think that's one of the reasons why this movie felt boring to me, as well as the constant flashback and then going back to regular time. And this movie's like trying to cover not only the creation of man, but then going up to present day time, and it's not really working. And then you're trying to provide a reason as to why the Eternals have been on Earth for so long, but they never interfered with any of the stuff that the Avengers did. And the main reason is because the Celestial that sent them to Earth told them not to, and the only thing they could deal with was deviance only, nothing else. But you do see that they did use their powers to guide human beings, and that also didn't work out so well in some areas. Now I want to talk about the individual characters and how I think each one did. Gemma Chan as Cersei, who's the main character, I thought she was pretty good in the film. Richard Madden as Icarus, he is such a better actor in Rocket Man. In this movie, he acts like a robot, and I don't know if, obviously this is what the director wanted, but if he was allowed to actually really act, actually really put in the same charisma that he put in Rocket Man, I think I could actually feel the character a little bit better. But I don't. He just feels like a robot to me. Angelina Jolie, I thought was pretty good in the movie, even though she's like the designated Wonder Woman of this film, and these Eternals are like a discount Justice League, with Richard Madden's character being like discount Superman, and Batari is a discount Flash. She's literally a speedster. And there are some other characters with some generic powers, like one has superhuman strength. Barry Coogan's character has a power of mind control. Sprite has the power of illusion. Ajak has the power to heal. Cersei has the power to affect elementals. She can make a wall manifest or make it disappear. And her power is a defensive power, while there are other powers that among the Eternals that are more offensive. It depends upon each Eternal. And this movie just wasn't very good. I did like Brian Tyree Henry, who is one of the comic relief characters. I did like Kamami Njani until the climax of the movie, because he wasn't in the climax of the film. I thought, wait a minute, you're not going to need the climax? I thought you were going to be in the whole movie. And you work out and you show off your new chest on the internet for this movie, and you're not even in the climax? What? So overall, this movie really wasn't as good as I hoped it was going to be. I really could see the reasons as to why the critics didn't like this movie. Although the defense I hear from some of the people that did like this movie, like, it's not your normal Marvel film. It is very much your typical Marvel film. It has very much some of the same beats that a Marvel film. Like, the only difference is that it moves at a slower pace, which is one of the reasons why I was so bored. with this film, and the acting felt so stilted among some of the actors. I mean, not all the actors were stilted. You could feel emotion from some of the other actors, but I think only the actors that the director allowed for them to emote, really. And we had two romances in this movie, or you could say like three, because the main character, Cersei, has two love interests, Icarus and Dane Whitman, Kit Harington's character. And the other romance is between Matari and Drulig, Barry Coogan and the Speedster. I actually felt more chemistry between Matari and Drulig than Cersei and Icarus, really. I did think that maybe there was maybe a little bit of chemistry between Cersei and Dane Whitman, but the most chemistry I felt was between Matari and Drulig. I did like the friendship that Gilgamesh and Athena had. And I did like the comic relief from Kamal Janani and Brian Tyree Henry. But this movie just wasn't very good, and one of the other problems with this movie is very much about tokenism. It's very much about showing the diversity of each character and making that the main focus of the movie. You got one character, Brian Tyree Henry's character, who's gay. You got Matari, who's deaf and mute. And that's all great and fine. You got diversity and inclusion in this movie, but they just feel kind of bland to me, really, with some exceptions. Like Kamal Janani's character I did like, because he was one of the comic reliefs of the movie, and I did like Barry Coogan, and I did like Matari and Angelina Jolie's Athena, but some of the characters I really couldn't get invested in because the director wasn't allowing them to emote enough, really. And I know, like, Richard Madden can act because I've seen him do a wonderful job in Rocket Man, but in this movie, he just feels so wooden in this film. And I know he's not really like that. I know Barry Coogan is a good actor. It just doesn't work, really. You gotta let these actors act. You gotta let these actors just show some emotion, really. I don't know if this is how they are in the comics, because I've never read the comics, but it just doesn't work within a movie format, really. And I do think if this was a show also, you could actually fully develop these characters much better and fully develop the story better as well. So overall, this movie is a disappointment, but I didn't walk out hating the movie either. So I'm going to give it a C-. It's pretty much just not a memorable movie, which is not a good grade for a Marvel film anyway. I'm not going to give it a D or an F, but a C- is still not a good grade. As far as if it's the worst movie ever of the MCU movies, I was thinking either this movie could be the worst, or maybe Captain Marvel, perhaps, because I did have some problems with that after thinking about it for a while. But overall, this movie I think could have been better with a different director. And I have heard that Kevin Feige once he heard how bad the movie did, that he was upset with the director, and she was supposed to direct something with the Disney Star Wars, but now she's not getting that project. And who knows what that means for an Eternals 2, if there's going to be a sequel to this. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But that's all I got to say for this movie. This movie just wasn't very good.